We'll be hosting a Q&A with some of the cast after the film, but for now, please welcome Wapeemukwa.
This work is the culmination of several years of short films and work that I have been developing with real people and real problems. And in the spirit of the collaborative and reciprocal process that this film took, we have some cast with us tonight that will be joining us on stage for the Q&A after, and I would encourage all of you to stick around. Thank you for coming out, and thanks again to Magali for making this possible.
Amazing cast members and full-on participants in this film, Harrower. Please welcome Angel Gates. We, of course, want to turn it to the audience, but first, let me ask, because we have cast members here with us, and I know, Angel, you've come from Vancouver on a train in the past days to be here, so thank you. Ken, there he is. I want to ask about the casting. This is a very unusual film and casting process. You have sort of trained actors or actors that have worked before. You have people that have not and are immersing a lot of their own lives in the films. How did you go at first meeting everybody and constructing this?
I'd also like to call up Jeremy Cox, the cinematographer. As with any kind of hybrid documentary like this, the casting process it took years. It took several years to amalgamate the connections and the trust and the relationships that a film like this required. So the casting process was, I guess, developed over several years when I was making short films in and around the downtown east side, and when I came here in 2014 with my short film and was able to meet the very talented Harrower. And so the actual process itself was more about relationship building and acquiring a kind of trust and bond with people who are brave enough as these guys to share their stories with the world.
Angel, you're all out to this film. It's staggering to see on screen. Was there ever any reticence or fear on your part in going so far in there?
I guess I was a little fearful in the beginning. It was the shower scene, the very like years ago now, that actually scared me the most. But I got through it, and letting myself be out there like so raw, like things in my life that have loosely have happened or whatever, like putting it out there for the world to see was a little unnerving at first, but now I find it more freeing.
Ken, we've seen your work in many films through the years. You're actually right now a very prolific Toronto actor. What attracted you to this film? And similar to Angel, I would say, was there any struggles in going into a film that is, I guess, that difficult?
For me, what attracted me was meeting Wayne. My story was developed only last year. So, and the part that made me most nervous is I had to pretend I fell down all those stairs in the hotel.
How and why did you go from short to feature? Because there was a shorter version of this film at TIFF a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's a good question because there are indeed scenes in this film that were in the short film, and there are a couple that we decided to reshoot. There are also like several other short films that I've made with the cast members in this film, and so over the last several years, it was a matter of kind of pivoting around this story. Like I always knew that I wanted to create a feature film about this amazing, amazing community, and I wanted to put the people in this community in the front seat and have them collaborate and work on telling a story that we all need to hear. But at the end of the day, what I needed to do first was explore new territory and develop relationships like I've mentioned previously. And so that was the impetus behind making those short films. As a specific example, the scene with Eric and Angel in the feature film was featured in the short film as well. The crucial difference, however, is in the short film, they themselves had a relationship, and Eric actually, in the short film, had HIV. But here, it was a matter of rewriting his story so that he uses that as a kind of way in order to acquire money from certain people, as if he had no control over himself, and as what happens during addiction. One of the first decisions I made on the film was whether or not it wanted to be a day-in-the-life kind of story or set during this very specific time and location. And the rationale behind that was twofold. Firstly, I thought it was important to tell the other side of the games, hence the first shot of the film being under the ice and we're coming out from the other side. I thought that, me personally, during the Olympics, I was in and around it. I was living in Vancouver, and I saw a city split from within. I saw it compartmentalized entirely. I saw a completely different city on screen than I did on the streets. What I experienced was actually more of a militaristic presence, actually more than anything during the games. And that's not something that you saw behind the facade of separate patriotism that was displayed and exhibited through the games. And so that was the rationale behind situating this film during that specific time, was to tell the other side to that story, because there always is another side, and that's something that we should be very honest and open about, especially considering this country's 150th.
Could you speak to the scripting process that you went through in order to write those scenes?
The scripting process.
So as you noticed in the credits, all of the main talent gets a story credit because the stories that are woven together in this film were taken from the lives of the individuals who are telling these stories. There are very specific examples like Mark McKay, to whom the film is dedicated. He's played by Joe Dion Buffalo. He passed away 2 months before we went to camera. And he told me a story over the years that we've known each other about how he went home to his mother's house in Shaughnessy and his mother called the cops on him on Christmas Day one year. And that was a specific example that he wanted to include in the movie. He himself made sure that needed to be in there. And so we have many, many scenes in the film that were actually inspired by real events. With Ken's story in particular, I would go to him for advice and ask him, like, you know, how might it look like if you were mugged in the alleyway? What would that be like? And so that was a kind of reciprocal process that I've had with each of the talent involved in the project.
Can you tell me what the title means?
Luk'Luk'I is the Musqueam name for the area known today as the downtown east side. So at the end of the day, it is up to me to live up to the task of telling the story in the way that it ought to be told. And it is me who's the target of criticism, and that's the only way that I want it to be, because these people are brave and they deserve the universe, and if anybody's to blame, it's going to be me.
I don't know that I ever, that I did leave anything behind. I mean, a lot of it was thinking about my dog's in this movie, and I've been away from her for 5 days, so I'm still like really missing her. So a lot of it was thinking about losing my dog, you know. So, and because the character is me, and it's based on my life, it's, or at least parts of my life. So I didn't really leave, like she's with me, because it's me, parts of me. So, yeah. Thank you.
that does bring up the question of hybridity in fact and fiction, right? Many of the scenes were scripted. I think, let's talk about a specific example, is Joe and Kevin at the skate park near the beginning of the movie talking about family. So that was a scene that was scripted. I knew that they needed to connect over family because that would give Joe motivation to go and reconnect with his family. But then after meeting Kevin through Angel, what I found was that in order to actually reach that real connection, that real moment, what we needed to do was open up a space in which they could actually share something real that's happened to them. So Kevin was able to share his actual story. So in a weird way, that shot of him is documentarian in a way. That's just him, that's actually me asking him questions and talking to him. And he's known Joe for years as well, they're childhood friends. But then on Joe's angle, that was scripted. So in more than one occasion during this filming process, we would actually have two different shots that were intercut, one being completely improvised documentarian and the other to the text.
How about the UFO?
How about the UFO?
Well, as I mentioned, I keep mentioning Mark, and Mark saw UFOs. It's not for me to deny that experience at all. If he saw them, right? And when we were thinking about recasting his role after he passed away, one of the biggest challenges I faced was how to honor his story. And Eric and him were best friends like for decades, and Eric was adamant that Mark needed to be in it somehow. And so when we put Joe in the front seat there, we needed to find a way to not only honor Mark's story, but to also make it real for Joe as well. And so the UFO not only became a kind of like mnemonic reminder of Mark and his struggles and his spectral observations, but also for the specter of colonialism that was looming around Joe in his entire life the entire time. His actual abduction takes place in Crab Park, which is currently being excised by the city. And that came to my attention when I was doing research and hanging around the Aboriginal front door on East Hastings Street, making connections. And that's an area, the park specifically, where a lot of people are concerned about the theft of land currently occurring right now in Vancouver. And so it became evident for me that the UFO, if it is indeed a metaphor for colonialism, it needs to take place in Crab Park, the area which is going to be targeted by the state at this moment and being excised.